GRDC Harvester Setup Guide is designed to help you maximise the capacity of your harvester and minimise losses. Hopefully the guide provides you with some tips and tricks to improve your harvesting performance. Harvest weed seed control is an essential component of any integrated weed management program, and good seed separation is essential in making harvest weed seed control work. Different types of harvest weed seed control will impact how we set up the harvester, so it's important to understand those setup requirements and also how we might measure losses. So there's a couple of harvest weed seed control methods that might be relevant and worthy of consideration. One of those is chaff lining or narrow windrow burning. This involves retaining harvested crop and weed material in narrow rows and either allowing them to rot down or burning them to destroy the weed seeds. Chaff decks separate the chaff fraction and weed seeds and dump them in the wheel tracks that, in a controlled traffic system, offer a hostile growing environment for weeds. The implications for the harvester setup at the time, as for chaff lining, although the sampling patterns and loss calculations differ as material is divided up into 2 rows rather than 1. Chaff carts collect all the chaff and dump them in piles for burning or grazing. Areas of the harvester setup that might affect the efficacy or that need to be considered when using chaff carts include loss measurement calculations and horsepower requirements. Bale direct involves towing a baler directly behind the harvester and using a power taker from the harvester to bale the chaff as it's produced. Seed impact mills are gaining in popularity and pulverise the entire chaff fraction, destroying up to 98% of weed seeds that enter the impact mill. The mills use a cage spinning mill with either counter-rotating bars or high-speed air and impact bars. Things to consider for harvester setup and optimisation include loss measurement calculations, the cost of wear and tear on mill machinery, horsepower requirements and harvesting conditions. When looking at harvest weed seed control options, consider the impacts of a breakdown or adverse conditions on overall operating cost and efficiency. It's also important to consider how quickly the harvest weed seed control component can be disconnected or bypassed, and how quickly or easy it is to get the technical support at short notice, and whether it will be possible to continue harvesting in the meantime.
When it comes to harvest weed seed control, if we minimise the losses that we get on our front, we also minimise the losses that we get in our weed seeds. The more weed seeds we can capture onto our front, the more weed seeds will go onto our control systems that's fitted on the header.
Once weed seeds have entered the harvester over the front and through the feeder house, the threshing section of the rotor will remove the seeds just as it does the grain from the crops. As the straw mat moves over the separator, the weed seeds and grain should fall out of the rotor and onto the sieves. As long as the rotor and concaves are set up to thrash all the grain effectively, they will also remove all the weed seeds. Weed seeds should exit the rotor and the cleaning section with the chaff. They should then pass into a weed seed impact mill underneath its baffle to be managed with the chaff if we're using chaff carting, chaff lining, decks or a harvest weed seed mill. Low grain losses from your rotor equal low weed seed losses. It is critical to measure and minimise grain losses from the rotor by using drop trays. After thrashing, at least 95% of the weed seeds that enter the harvester should be in the chaff fraction on our sieve. The aim is to keep weed seeds supported in the chaff by airflow from the fan so they do not fall through the sieve with the grain. Weed seeds generally will have a lower mass than the grain and are not blown out with the straw. The optimal fan speed for grain cleaning should also be suitable for weed seed capture. Start with a lower fan speed and a dirtier grain sample. Increase the fan speed until the grain sample is just clean enough. Reduce the fan speed slightly so the grain sample is just shy of perfectly clean. Next, measure the chaff and rotor losses using drop pans behind the harvester. This ensures the grain and the weed seed losses are both minimal. A baffle is essentially a fence that interrupts the air carrying denser materials coming off the sieves into our harvest weed seed control tool. The baffle position should enable it to catch a high terminal velocity material, which is generally smaller, and dense objects such as weed seeds being blown from the sieve. while low terminal velocity chaff and light material may be blown over the top of the baffle and exit with our straw. A typical baffle is set up so the top edge is 300 to 400 millimetres above the height of the sieve and directly above the rear of the sieve when the sieve is as far back as it can go. Some harvesters do not require a harvest weed seed control baffle. For class machines, chaff and straw are kept completely separate, so a baffle is not necessary. With New Holland machines, some models have a short conveyor belt, which is known as a PSD. This PSD transfers straw from the rotor to the chopper, and they may not need baffling. In contrast, most Case IH and John Deere harvesters will require a baffle as the chaff and straw exit the cleaning area together. Remember, baffle requirements and setups vary widely depending on the type of harvester, the type of harvest weed seed control tool, and the chopper and straw spreader that is installed. It is worth seeking independent specialist advice from your harvest weed seed control provider, machinery dealer, or an independent consultant.
Losses and harvest weed seed control are closely linked. At the end of the day, we're bringing material in, we want to minimise losses so that we also get good harvest weed seed control. So measuring those losses ensures that we also get as much of the weed seed material into the harvest weed seed control option that we've selected. And while we're talking about harvesting, just a quick word about safety. Harvesting comes with inherent risks, and one of those risks is the risk of fire. We need to make sure that we're well prepared, we have the right equipment, and also that we've had a meeting with our team to make sure we all know what's going to happen if there is a fire. Maintenance and hygiene are absolutely key to minimising harvester fire risk.